Hi, I'm Rashonda Cade. This is Reading with Rashonda, and we're still reading William Wells Brown's Clotel. Today we're at Chapter 17, Retaliation. I had a dream, a happy dream. I thought that I was free, that in my own bright land again a home there was for me. With the deepest humiliation, Horatio Green saw the daughter of Clotel, his own child, brought into his dwelling as a servant. His wife felt that she had been deceived and determined to punish her deceiver. At first, Mary was put to work in the kitchen, where she met with little or no sympathy from the other slaves, owing to the fairness of her complexion. The child was white. What should be done to make her look like other Negroes was the question Mrs. Green asked herself. At last she hit upon a plan. There was a garden at the back of the house over which Mrs. Green could look from her parlor window. Here the white slave girl was put to work without either bonnet or handkerchief upon her head. A hot sun poured its broiling rays on the naked face and the neck of the girl until she sank down in the corner of the garden and was actually broiled to sleep. "Dat little nigger ain't working a bit, missus," said Dinah to Mrs. Green as she entered the kitchen. "She's lying in the sun seasoning. She will work better by and by," replied the mistress. "Dese white niggers always think deyself so good as white folks," continued the cook. "Yes, but we will teach them better. Won't we, Dinah?" "Yes, missus. I don't like dese mulatto niggers nohow. Dey always want to set deyself up for something big." The cook was black and was not without that prejudice which is to be found among the Negroes as well as among the whites of the southern states. The sun had the desired effect, for in less than a fortnight Mary's fair complexion had disappeared, and she was but little whiter than any other mulatto children running about the yard. But the close resemblance between the father and child annoyed the mistress more than the mere whiteness of the child's complexion. Horatio made proposition after proposition to have the girl sent away, for every time he beheld her countenance it reminded him of the happy days he had spent with Clotel. But his wife had commenced and determined to carry out her unfeeling and fiendish designs. This child was not only white, but she was the granddaughter of Thomas Jefferson, the man who, when speaking against slavery in the legislature of Virginia, said, "The whole commerce between master and slave is a perpetual exercise of the most boisterous passions, the most unremitting despotism on the one part, and degrading submission on the other. With what execration should the statesman be loaded who, permitting one half the citizens thus to trample on the rights of the other, transforms those into despots and these into enemies, destroys the morals of the one part and the amour patriae of the other? For if the slave can have a country in this world, it must be any other in preference to that in which he is born to live and labor for another, in which he must lock up the faculties of his nature, contribute as far as depends on his individual endeavors to the evanishment of the human race, or entail his own miserable condition on the endless generations proceeding from him. And can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are a gift of God, that they are not to be violated but with his wrath? Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, that his justice cannot sleep forever, that considering numbers, nature, and natural means only, a revolution of the wheel of fortune, an exchange of situation is among possible events, that it may become probable by supernatural interference. The Almighty has no attribute which can take side with us in such a contest." Whoa. I actually don't know if Thomas Jefferson said all of this. I'm imagining that this is actual text from an actual speech that Jefferson gave in the Virginia legislature, but I'm honestly not certain. But we will continue with the speech. "What an incomprehensible machine is man, Who can endure toil, famine, stripes, imprisonment, and death itself in vindication of his own liberty, and the next moment be deaf to all those motives whose power supported him through his trial, and inflict on his fellow men a bondage, 1 hour of which is fraught with more misery than ages of that which he rose in rebellion to oppose? Let's stop there for a moment, because I wonder the same thing all of the time. How could the framers say things that they said and believe what they believed and fight for their freedom against the tyranny of King George and turn around and be like, but it's cool to enslave black people? The cognitive dissonance of that is immense. Immense. But I should settle and continue reading. But we must wait with patience the workings of an overruling providence, and hope that that is preparing the deliverance of these our suffering brethren. Did he really just say, oh, the madness of it all? There's nothing we can do. Let's wait for providence to fix it. Do I believe that God can fix it? Absolutely. There is nothing that he can't fix, but I also believe that he empowers us to fix some things. Slavery was a thing he empowered us to fix. The ills that are going on in society right now, he has empowered us to fix them. We don't have to wait for him to miraculously enter in. He can. But he has put us in the places he has put us to affect the change that he needs affected in the world in this moment. That is why each and every single one of us exists. To impact the world for God's glory through the gifts he has given us. I believe that I am impacting the world right now by seeing fit to read this wealth of literature. Everybody's not going to agree with that, but it's what I can do in this moment, in addition to other things, right? So it's what I'm doing. So I will get off of my pedestal and get back to reading. When the measure of their tears shall be full, when their tears shall have involved heaven itself in darkness, doubtless a God of justice will awaken to their distress, and by diffusing light and liberality among their oppressors, or at length by his exterminating thunder, manifest his attention to things of this world, and that they are not left to the guidance of blind fatality. And this ends Brown's quote of Thomas Jefferson. The same man, speaking of the probability that the slaves might someday attempt to gain their liberties by a revolution, said, I tremble for my country when I recollect that God is just, and that his justice cannot sleep forever. The Almighty has no attribute that can take sides with us in such a struggle. I am down with that. We should tremble that God is just, because his justice will not sleep forever when we are acting unjustly. And back to the text. But sad to say, Jefferson is not the only American statesman who has spoken high-sounding words in favor of freedom and then left his own children to die slaves. And that was chapter 17 of William Wells Brown's Clotel, and we'll stop there for now. I'm Rashonda Cade, and this is Reading with Rashonda. Thanks for joining me.